I sit down, I light one up, and pour myself a drink. And I have found that it picks me up, it gives me time to think. It's been a long day, you know it's true. But I'm feeling right at home. And now I must say that time is due. Let's get on with the show. Not just blowing smoke.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Not Just Blowing Smoke, coming at you live from Twin Smoke Shop Studio headquarters in Londonderry, New Hampshire. If you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube Live, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're listening after the fact on Podbean, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, iTunes, or Google, or wherever else you found us, make sure you hit that subscribe button where you're at so that you don't ever miss a thing. I'm Pastor Padron. I'm here with my co-hosts, Pat and Dave. Bree is coming. She's going to join us in just a second. She's bringing our cocktails, which is a little bit of a to-do tonight. Here they come now. And we're continuing our discussion of the top cigars of 2022. And we're going to be enjoying this special baby while we do that. This is the Twins 25th anniversary cigar from Kristoff. It is a box press figurado of their San Andreas blend, um, gold bands and a golden black Twins 25th anniversary secondary band on the cigar. This is my fourth or fifth cigar, and it is really, really good. We got uh, 300 boxes of these ordered, and they're $12 a piece. The box is $109.99, and they're around as long as supplies last. We may ask for more, but there are a number of companies that are making us 25th anniversary cigars. We've been on the map here at Twins for 25 years, and this is the first one to come through, though, and it is a big winner. You can just put those down there, thanks. Um, Very nice, very earthy, very. Are you coming in? Right here, huh? Here we go. There's Bree.
Right.
And now we are four.
Yeah.
Very earthy, lots of nice dark chocolate flavors, dark cocoa flavors, a little bit of espresso, I think, in there. There's some nice pepper in the retrohale. It's a very smooth cigar, very consistent cigar. Dave, what are your impressions so far of the 25th anniversary?
It's just to pair what you said. It's very smooth. Get a lot of cocoa notes with it. A lot of I get a little bit of espresso,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a little bit of a little sweetness too. But the I feel like this is it feels a little bit stronger than their regular San Andreas, than the Toro that we had with the TAA or the
Mm-hmm.
Robusto. Um, it's my favorite of the San Andreas that they have.
Pat, what about yourself?
Yeah, it's good medium bodied smoke. It has like that kind of dry, creamy texture to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like a nice dark oak wood. It's really rich. The espresso notes are there. Some, kind of unsweetened cocoa, but then there's like a sweetness that kind of lingers on your palate through the finish. Like it's not
Yeah.
like the sweetness isn't prevalent like on the palate, like on the initial draw, but then as like the smoke kind of settles on your palate, it kind of develops like a nice kind of rich dark sweetness.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Bree? What are you picking up off that bad boy?
So, I just lit it up, but I had a few puffs off of yours earlier when we were
Mhm.
deciding on the drink. I
True
think you
dat.
were you were
Mhm.
about like an inch into it, and I was getting like a little bit of a cocoa note. I was getting a little bit of the espresso, um, and I think I was expecting there to be a little bit of spice, just
Mhm.
because of my past experiences with Kristoff. And so that's what kind of led us to today's cocktail decision.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? We've got 2 drinks apiece here. What's
Yes.
going on?
So it is complicated. So initially, like the recipe itself is 2 ounces of our 724 barrel select Old Forester. It has a little bit of brown sugar simple syrup, about half an ounce of Amaro Nonino, which is almost like a bitter type, almost vermouth-esque cordial.
Mhm.
And then it has 3/4 ounce of chili pepper liqueur,
Mm.
anchovies, and then it also has about 2 ounces of cold brew. So I put a sidecar of the cold brew. We rim the glass with some chocolate and ground coffee. But yeah, I just kind of I think was looking for a little bit more of the coffee note, so I was kind of curious to see everyone's take on it. Depending on the ratios, it can either be sweeter or more coffee forward, and
right.
you get the bourbon, of course, because Old Forester tends to be a little bit higher proof.
Right.
So yeah, I figure we'll experiment with the cocktail as is, and then if need be, throw in either a chaser or a splash of the cold brew. And this is nitro cold brew from our new machine that's
Yes.
in the cocktail, and then we just did flat pour cold brew for the sidecar.
Nice. Right. So, has anyone actually tried the cocktail yet?
Mm-mm.
I'm pulling up some stuff that I want to have here on the show. Let's see. There's that.
Mm.
And
Interesting. Hmm.
yes.
It looks like Dave's ready to go. So
Feel free to go, Pat.
yeah, the cocktail has kind of like the old like the sweet woodiness of the Old Forester definitely comes out, but then obviously the coffee, and then chocolate sweetness because I sipped the side that had the chocolate rim to it,
Mhm.
and then like with the cigar, it actually kind of brings the spice out a little bit more on the retro for me, and it makes it more like that sweetness develops earlier on the palate than late through the finish. And then the kind of that oak wood note that I referenced earlier is what is lingering on the finish. So it's more of like that darker kind of like woodier aspects that linger, and it's more of like a medium plus finish too. It lingers a little bit longer.
Hmm.
Now, what do you think, Bree? You made this up kind of on the spot.
Yeah. So I guess it's also a consistency thing. The first one I made for you, I think, was slightly more bourbon forward.
Mm-hmm.
You really got that Old Forester off the bat. And
You
funny,
really got.
you
it.
really got. But funny story, when I was making this batch, I put everything in except for the bourbon. And then last minute I was like, I forgot to add the bourbon. So I had to remix it, go back. But yeah, so it should still have that 2 ounces of bourbon, but there might be a little more cold brew added to the actual cocktail than
Okay.
the one that you initially tried. So the
All right.
bourbon may not be as forward. So I'm glad to hear from Pat that he was still able to get some of the woody sweetness from the Old Forester.
Yeah,
I
it's like a
definitely still get that.
it's like a perfect blend of woody sweetness and coffee notes. It's like half and half.
I was concerned when I first sipped it that it was going to be too sweet for the cigar, but the more I smoked the cigar and sipped the cocktail, the more I thought it was a really good pairing. It really seemed to uh, match the flavors of the cigar really well. It was very refreshing to have a sip of the cocktail and then Very refreshing to pull on the cigar, and then very refreshing to sip on the cocktail. It was very good. It didn't last all that long.
They are
And I
very
refer
similar.
to the cocktail, of course.
I feel like when you take the pull of the cigar, you get like a little bit of sweetness and then that creamy, um, woody and like espresso notes.
Mm.
And it's like with the drink, you get the sweetness, the sweet wood, and then you taste the oh, geez, I can't even think right now.
Why is that, Dave?
The coffee notes. Yeah. I like the sweet wood and then the coffee notes and then a little bit of the brown sugar.
Mm-hmm. So, last week on the show, we had said that this week we were going to announce the winners of our categories of our top cigars.
We
for-
lied.
Well, stuff came up. And basically, I'm gonna blame it on Pat, but it was a great idea. It was something that I thought was definitely worth going with. And something that's going on at Twins between now and the 10th next week is we have packs that have 4 of the customer favorites of 2022 in the pack. And Pat, do you want to talk about those and how that works and how your idea came about?
Yeah, so I mean, last week on the show we have different categories we made. So we have, the best blend, the best line extension, those 2 other ones, right?
Yep, there was best value cigar and best limited edition.
Yep. So, and that was really based on our subjective palates. So I know a lot of different shops and a lot of other publishments have kind of a
Publishments.
yeah, more of like an objective opinion, based on obviously the publishments are most subjective, but then shops, you can argue they're subjective as well, but they're supposed to be objective based on performance in the humidor, both from staffs, palates, and consumers.
Mhm.
So I wanted to make a pack that, took 4 cigars based on sales and throughout the performance throughout the entire year. All the cigars in the pack are cigars that have been in the humidor for the entirety of the year. A couple came out for 4th quarter last year, but then, in the humidor we got them in like early January last year. So I wanted to, and I took the bands off of them because, if you knew what the cigars were, there could be some bias, so I want to just eliminate as much bias as I can. And honestly, at first, I thought it would be pretty obvious what the cigars were, but then after hearing feedback from people, what they're guessing they are, it's like no one's been even close to what any of the cigars actually are in the pack. So, and they're really, really good cigars. I mean, if you bought all 4 of them separately, it'd be around $60. We're selling it for $39.99. So, and they're all really good cigars. Again, like we chose them based off of performance in the humidor. So like any one of them is going to be a really good one.
I'd be happy to smoke anything in that pack.
Yeah. So inside of the pack, we have score sheets 1 through 4. So it resembles the numbered band on the cigar. And then you just rate it 1 through 10. And then you turn it into a tobacconist here before, I'd say 5 p.m. is pretty reasonable on Tuesday of the 10th. And then we're going to tally everything up, and then we're going to announce the winner on the show, and then we're going to disclose what the cigars were during the show. So.
Yeah, and we wanted to have some extra time to do that. If you're giving people 4 cigars to smoke, giving them a couple of days is not really long enough, so we pushed things off for a little bit. That said, last year we announced our Cigar of the Year the second week in January as well. So there's some kind of precedent also for putting it off that far. But one of the things, some other stuff going on here at Twins, I guess, before I go on. January 14th is our next pipe club. It's going to be very laid back. You can come between 12 and 4 p.m. to the Londonderry store. We're going to have different tobaccos for you to try. We're just coming off of our major Savinelli event, so here's a chance to bring your latest acquisitions, sit and smoke some of the new stuff that's coming to the shop. We have recently gotten back in Samuel Gawith, which we haven't been able to get because of distributor issues for almost a couple of years. So we'll be looking at some of those tobaccos, and it should be a really good time. And then
Do you mean SBC?
no, I mean
Thought we always had Gawith.
not Samuel Gawith.
Okay.
Gawith Hogarth, yes, but not Samuel Gawith.
Okay. My bad.
Mm-hmm. And then on January 26th and 27th, we have some events coming up with featuring blackened cigars. You want to talk about that, Pat? As the resident Drew Estate guru.
Yeah, so Drew Estate released their they did their freestyle live pack. It was the fourth one that they've done, and the mystery cigar was the Drew Estate Blackened. So that's a collaboration with Metallica and the Blackened whiskey, which I think recently got put into New Hampshire. It's been out for like a year, but I think New Hampshire
it's
it's
on
pretty
the
new
shelf
in New
in
Hampshire.
New Hampshire now. Yeah.
So it's the triple Maduro. So it's a Maduro Puro, you can call it. It's all Maduro tobacco, and then it's made to pair with the Blackened, which I haven't had the Blackened yet, so I don't really know how it pairs, but it's a really dark, rich, like spicy cigar. It's kind of like if you took the Undercrown and made it more spicy, and then took a little bit of that sweetness out of it. And that's really it. So that the event, we're giving away so we took a Blackened box, and we have somebody that makes real working electric guitars out of cigar boxes. So the grand prize you can win at the event is going to be the Drew Estate Blackened guitar. There's going to be
That's
other,
gonna be nice.
and there's a bunch of Blackened swag. I mean, everyone that's been to a Drew Estate event knows that they always have really nice event swag. So in addition to the usual Drew Estate swag you can get, we're going to have that guitar for a grand prize.
Yep. And there'll be we're bringing Blackened into the bar here, the whiskey, and so there'll be all sorts of pairings and opportunities to enjoy both together the way it was meant to be. What's the slogan for the Blackened cigars?
Maduro to the core.
Maduro to the core. That
Which
is
it is.
so Drew Estate. It's Maduro to the core. And Nick Laramie's going to be here for both those events, the 26th at Hooksett and the 27th at Londonderry. You'll be very, very sad if you miss out on both of those events. Some good stuff coming on in January, especially when it's, everything's kind of slowed down. Christmas is over. New Year's over. You got time to breathe. You got time to figure out what you want to do. There's a number of things going on. Smoke that 4-pack of cigars, Pipe Club, the Blackened events. It's going to be a good month. It's going to be a good month of Twins. Right, Bree?
Oh yeah.
Right, Bree?
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
So what we thought we would do this week, is talk about some of the other industry lists of top cigars of 2022 that have come out. And there are two in particular that I think are at the top of everybody's list. Cigar Aficionado released their top 25, and Cigar
Yeah.
Journal
Yep.
also released their top 25 list. I don't think Half Wheel has done so yet.
Nope.
I went looking; they had
Cigar
not.
Snob did.
Cigar Snob did their top 25.
Cigar Coop he's not finishing it until the 9th. He's releasing like one a day.
Yeah,
And
that's how they
yeah.
do it. So, I thought we'd talk about each of these, what we thought about them, what we liked, what we didn't, lessons we could learn. Were there any big things that we missed on our own list? Frankly, talking in general about the Cigar Journal and Cigar Aficionado, which are probably the two big cigar magazines out there. Cigars and Spirits is also big, but I don't think it's quite as prevalent as the other two. the one thing I noticed about Cigar Aficionado is that most of the cigars on its list were cigars that have been out for some time. And there were a number of Cubans on it as well. Looking at the Cigar Journal list, to their credit, I think these were all cigars that were new for this year, and it's actually listed as the top new cigars of 2022. But what I noticed about this list was I'd never heard of most of these cigars. And, I figure working at Twins, which is one of the largest cigar stores in America, and certainly, in the top one or two in New Hampshire, you would think you'd heard of some of this stuff. But a lot of these things I didn't even know the brand, let alone the size of the cigars. You see these, Bree? I mean, that, of course, yeah, that, of course.
Now you're hitting the
But
Fernandez
like, what's that, So I'm looking at these lists going, I don't quite know what to do with them. Some of these cigars, I think, in the Cigar Journal list are limited to certain places or regions in the country.
Mm-hmm.
At least one of those cigars I know is, it's not limited to a shop, but it's a very small distribution for the cigar. So it's like it was like learning about all these things that I had not heard of before. And then Cigar Aficionado, all these cigars that I've known for years, but I'm wondering what put these things on the list. On
Money.
on Cigar Aficionado, I think the only new cigars on here were the New World Dorado from AJ Fernandez,
Well, the Rocky Patel 60.
or the Rocky Patel 60. I don't think anything else on this list actually came out this year.
Nope.
All the other cigars have been out forever.
Gone with
There
the
also-
wind one again.
There also seems to be a lot of Churchills in the Cigar Aficionado list. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Churchills, which seems odd too, because that's not a very popular size of a cigar too. Anyway, and that's neither good nor bad. I want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think of these lists? What do you think that there were things that they missed? Were there things that we missed that were on their list? What do you think of these things?
So I can open it up. I haven't looked at Cigar Journal yet up until now, and I'm actually okay with it. They have a lot of limited releases that I don't think a lot of companies touch, because it's not something like, at the end of the day, there is advertisements and there's some loyalty there. I don't necessarily mean that invalidates everything that they're doing. It's definitely not like something that, like you should go out of your way to buy a Cuban cigar because it got number 1, right? But looking at Cigar Journal, like what I see as number 2 was the Winston Churchill limited edition 2022. I have a box of those, and I've smoked a couple of them, and it's a really, really, really good cigar. Again, like I mentioned it when we did Winston Churchill's birthdays episode, it takes the late hour and the core line and just blends them together. So, and it's the first time I've done that perfecto. It's a really, really good cigar. Number 1 being the Padron 95, right?
Yep,
Mhm.
the 95 Natural, which I can totally agree with.
Yeah, like again, I'm not really a big 60 gauge guy. I smoked the 95 and I was really impressed with it. I've bought numerous ones of them, and again, me buying a 60 gauge is pretty rare. And that's a really good
My
cigar.
mouth doesn't really like how that feels in it.
The Rocky 60's on there.
Yep.
And they did the 6x60. I've had that size once. I don't quite remember it. But I think the Rocky 60 is a really good blend. So seeing that on there too. That's why I agree with Cigar Aficionado's listing. If it were me, I would probably put it at 1. But because I've actually had the Cubans that they put it on theirs, and they're good. But whatever. So, and they have a lot of
You've had
smaller.
the H. Upmann number 2.
Yep.
What would you, how would you, on not rating it on this or whether it should be what score would you give it, like a 1 to 10? 10 being
See, if I had to score it subjectively, again, like a lot of Cuban cigars, like I really enjoy them, but it's more of like a coffee type thing. So, as a coffee pairing early in the morning, I'd probably give it like an 8, 8.5 maybe, like I think H. Upmann, when it comes to like the current state of Cubans, other than the boutique lines,
right.
I think H. Upmann's the only traditional brand that constantly has been putting out good cigars. So, the fact that if it was another Cohiba that got number 1, or just, Cohiba's on every 25 list for Cigar Aficionado. It's somewhere on the list. So seeing that H. Upmann was the one that they went with, I'm not necessarily upset about it. If they're going to do one that's a Cuban, obviously, like that would be what I choose, other than like a Juan Lopez. That's more of a boutique Habanos brand that I think is very underrated, and I would actually put it against the H. Upmann, but, that's just me. But going back to Cigar Journal, they have Vega Fina. That's a brand that we don't carry here, but it is a really good brand. I haven't smoked that specific cigar, but again, I think Vega Fina might be an Altadis brand, if I remember correctly. I think Altadis
It is,
does them.
yes.
They have a lot of Aurora in there, so I'm not really upset about their list. And there's one more, the Oliva 2021 nub. Again, we didn't get to have the regular one. We had the box press one because that was in the United States. This one was international. The nub one was really good that we got the box pressed. So,
Yes.
Seeing how that blend was, I'm actually kind of happy that it made the list. Because, again, like a lot of these publishments don't post limited editions because it doesn't benefit the manufacturer going into the next year.
Right.
So, if I were to say, like, base your purchasing on a list, Cigar Journal is a green light for me. Placencia 149, we don't have it in stock at Twins, but I've been asked about it almost all year. A lot of people like that cigar. The 20 Acre Farm, which personally I think is a phenomenal blend.
Yep.
And it doesn't get any recognition. That's on there. I'm happy to see that. It's, again, like Florida Sun-Grown Tobacco is a really tough tobacco to blend, and that's why, Steve Saka is doing something coming up with it. It's going to be more of an expensive cigar, he said, but it's a really boutique strain of tobacco, and not a lot of people use it because, again, it's really hard to blend. And if you want to look at like a big manufacturer, like investing, time and resource into developing this crop, they're not going to do it, right? So the fact that Drew Estate made a regular production cigar that utilizes not only a true Connecticut wrapper but also Florida Sun-Grown Tobacco, impressive, right? Like it's a good cigar. It gives you like those kind of aspects of a nice Connecticut, nice creaminess, but then gives you like nice kind of fuller bodied, sweet, spicy Florida Sun-Grown Tobacco. So I'm happy to see that there. The Davidoff Dominican Toro, I haven't had that Davidoff yet, so I can't speak to it. The La Roma de Cuba Pachon, again, Cuban seed Corojo on an Ashton cigar made by my father's factory. It's a good cigar. We had it early days in Twins this year. We don't have it in stock currently, but it sold really well when it came out. Again, it's more of a pricier La Roma de Cuba. It's not really, you don't look for that price point of La Roma, but, it was a good cigar. So, honestly, this list doesn't upset me. The American's on there.
Yep.
The Year of the Ox is on there. I've had that. Really good cigar. Again, limited edition. You can't get it after 2021 to my knowledge. So, it's, I'm happy to see that they, it doesn't seem biased to me, right?
Well, you know what the biggest difference is between this list and the Cigar Aficionado list?
What?
All of these cigars came out within the last 2 years.
Yeah, so I think Cigar Aficionado, since they...
Cigar Aficionado likes,
Yeah.
hey, this is like, I feel like Cigar Aficionado list is like, this is the best cigar of all time. It's not like, this is the cigar of the year. It's the cigar because they've been voting for Gone with the Wind for the 18 billionth time. Basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying.
It's not. I think people really need to understand that with Cigar Aficionado is that they're not.
Am I the only one
It's not the
though
cigar of the year.
that on
Did you notice that Garofalo had a cigar in there?
Yep.
Which one was it?
Number 15.
Yeah, right here.
Yep. The
The
Garofalo La Familia.
Oh, don't tell me I gave that thing a 7.5 on another podcast.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, again, like on this list too, like there are cigars that I feel that are desperately missing from this list.
Yeah,
That-
so looking at Cigar Aficionados list again, like I don't
Cigar aficionados left. I just don't even pay attention.
I don't know who reviews them. I'm not gonna completely crap on the list because again, like the H. Upmann number 2. Again, if you're gonna give a Cuban cigar, H. Upmann's gonna be it's reliable, and then historically the number 2 size is always a highly rated cigar. The Torpedo, again, you have the Montecristo number 2 that got number 1 like what 12 years ago, something like that. And then seeing the Rocky Patel 60 on there as well. And actually, they put the 60-60 on too, right?
Mhm. Yeah, the same cigar, and that was one of the few things that are in common between both lists. One on the number 2, one was number 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So, and honestly, when the 60 came out last year, I talked about it when we had Mike on a few weeks ago. It's a really good cigar. You know, it's one of the few cigars, again, you can get a Padron smoker on. And, you know, I have nothing wrong with seeing a Rocky. Actually, I would argue that the Rocky 60 should be number 1 if they're going to put it that high. Because, you know, when it comes to, like, you look at the markets and you look at, like, how many sell and how many people smoking it, reviews, I would say the Rocky 60 is probably more renowned and more highly rated than, you know, the H. Upmann number 2, but so be it. You know, number 3 being the Davidoff Nicaragua. That's one of the better Davidoffs. I think a lot of people would agree with. So I don't have an issue with that. The Hoya de Montreal that's on there, I haven't had that.
Mm-hmm.
And Oliva gets on it every year. You know, this one's a Series V. Typically, it's Melanio. They're always going to be there. The Black Market always makes an appearance. It seems like
I can't believe it's in the top 10.
I don't necessarily agree with that. The Padron that's on there, I actually had before the podcast. I didn't even realize it was on the list. Good cigar, nice Petit Corona. Romeo and Juliet, Churchill, and Nicaragua. You know, and then the past 2 years, the rare pinks have been number 10. I don't understand that. Like, I don't think Fuentes are not putting out anything new, really, for the most part. They're Nicaraguan factories, you know, finishing up their, you know, assembling it. The sophisticated hooker, like, it's like the Untold Story size. It's a huge Hemingway, essentially, and it's a good cigar. I mean, I haven't had it. I've had the other blends. They're good cigars. I haven't had that format of it. I don't know why the rare pink got on there twice. I don't think it's one of the best Fuentes. I'd rather have a core line Hemingway, you know, but you factor in, you know, they pay for marketing. I don't know. Maybe they want the new rare pinks out. I don't know how it goes in. You know, the Pledge got on it again at the 11th. The Pledge got number 1 last year. I don't know. It got number 1 2 years ago. Last year was the 1964 Torpedo. You know, there's a Cohiba there, Casa Magna that seems to make it on the list all the time too. Cigar Aficionados list, I definitely, when I looked at it, I was like underwhelmed by it. Again, I agree with the Rocky Patel one, but it just seems like, I guess to your point, like Cigar Journal, I like it because it has limited edition cigars, and I can agree with the ratings.
They're also recent.
Yeah, and the recent, you know.
Well, I don't know how Cigar Aficionado does theirs, but you know, the cigar journals are done blind, just like our cigar pack. They come to you with numbers. That's all that's there. That's all you see. It has nothing. You have no idea what you're smoking.
I think maybe because they have 12, Cigar Aficionado does 12 magazines a year, and they review tens and tens of cigars per magazine. So I'm guessing they just take the highest rated ones and they just throw them on a list.
That's basically how they do it. Yeah.
So, you know, they smoke everything, I guess. Like, you know, mainly, I feel like most of the time they smoke stuff that's been out, right? Like the Black Market's probably in almost every issue of Cigar Aficionado. You know, so it's not like an exciting list if you're really into cigars, because like, you know, like I smoked the Davidoff Winston Churchill limited edition, great cigar, but then that's not going to be seen on Cigar Aficionado, right? So I don't know, I think it's all you know, Half Wheel is another one that people look at because they follow the reviews throughout the year. I'm pretty sure they do the same thing. They take the top cigars that they gave ratings on. You know, like we chose the CLE Signature last year for our top cigar, and that one got tanked on Half Wheel. It was like a 70 rating or something.
Yep.
So I don't know, but I haven't seen a Cigar Journal top 25 till now, and I actually would say, you know, if you want to base purchasing off anything, that seems pretty. I would give it a green light. And then seeing the Rocky 60 in both, you know, one, I think most people smoke a Toro, so the fact that they both have like not only the same cigar but the same size, it's a pretty good thing to be told. But a lot of these lists have at least something that's in common.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I need to smoke the 60/60 again, I guess. So.
Yeah. As I'm looking at our lists for what we put on there, I think the only one that is in common with one of these lists is the Padron 1926 number 95.
Mm-hmm.
Although I picked the Maduro and Cigar Journal picked the Natural. But other than that, like the lists are completely different. Like if you're looking at Cigar Journal, our choices for best new blend were the Saka, the Ozinger, the Olmec, Claro or Maduro. I don't care.
I had the 20 acre on there, so it's kind of similar.
20 acre on.
There
Well,
was another list that I found that actually had the Olmec on it.
the Rocky Patel Edge 20th anniversary. Nobody had that on the list. The Street Tacos
was on the other
Carnitas,
the Carnitas was there was. I'm trying to find the list that
you
I
know,
found, but
and the
that
Byron
was on it too.
1850 that didn't make any list either. I just find it really amazing that none of our choices, you know, well, I can't say none. Very few of our choices made it anywhere on these lists. And why is that?
I feel like it's because, like, with us, we kind of just go week by week. So when something new comes out, if it's within the year, we can just quickly smoke it and be like, yeah, this is it. Like, we don't have to answer to anyone. But, you know, these magazines, I'm sure this is in the works the entire fourth quarter. I'm sure they're putting it together. They don't just put it together last minute after they smoke literally everything they possibly could up until the year ends. So, you know, those cigars, I would probably bet you they're going to be on next year's list. You know, like the Rocky 60 came out last year in the summer, and, you know, there were people talking, saying, like, why wasn't that on a list? Everyone thought that was going to be on a list somewhere. And I forget what Rocky got on the list last year. It wasn't any of the new ones. It's escaping me now, but there was a Rocky on the list last year. It was like number 6. I know the Rocky 6 got 9 2 years ago, but I forget which one got it last year. But, you know, and then like this year, now the 60's on there, you know, so, you know, when it comes to the Edge, I bet you money it's going to be the Edge with EBS next year, you know, that's just how, I feel like this is done before the end of the year, you know?
No, I totally agree.
So
And it begs the question then, is Cuba paying Cigar Aficionado money to get the number 1 spot?
I think that their only reader.
Well, that, you know, that brings up an interesting point too, Dave. You know, 20 years ago, when I started getting into the cigar business, Cigar Aficionado was out. It was like I looked forward
The
to that
Bible.
magazine coming out every month or 2 months, whenever it came out. And it was literally an inch and a quarter, inch and a half thick. It was this huge, huge production. And you look at them now, all the cigar magazines, they're so thin. You know, it's almost like People magazine has more pages going on than Cigar Aficionado. And you know, I think that speaks to the fact that, you know, people are not doing print stuff anymore, which then begs the question, you know, how much do these magazines actually impact the industry? Or are they kind of trying to hold on to influence that they had that we've now moved on from?
I think that's plainly visible. I mean, look at Cigar Aficionado's list. Let's name a number 1 cigar that no American can get legally.
Yeah, that
You know,
of all
so
the
it's like-
things on it, that's
so
what frustrates me the
who's-
most.
If they're trying to have subscribers, that's telling you their market is not the United States. That plainly. I mean, that's what it means to me. It's like, you know, or their market is the elite, the top 5% of the United States, and screw everybody else that's, not going to go to Cuba, that year for a vacation.
Or send for
go to,
boxes of cigars from somewhere where you can get them there.
in a time where they just increased the price by 300%.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
So I mean, what I'm surprised at is like today's day, the internet's been around for a while now, the fact that they have no influence on pretty much any social media like YouTube or Twitch or anything like that. Why don't they have like a live, showing or podcast or something like that represents the brand? It's like they're comfortable with just fading into the darkness, but their list, I think, is laughable as far as like what's like a good cigar and stuff like that. Like this is a list from smokingpipes.com where the Street Taco's on here.
Yep.
Eleanor Rose, I've never heard of that one.
I've had that. It's actually a very good cigar.
Then you have the KB Part 2. La Polina. I think that a lot of these are probably Smoking Pipes like exclusives or something like that.
Yes, that's a good sign, huh?
Hoya de Nicaragua.
Their list,
Cavalier.
yeah.
Yeah.
I looked
the
at their
Warped.
list too.
Yeah.
They actually had now Warped. They actually have some collaborations going on with him and some pipe tobaccos on their site. So
Foundations Olmec.
I'm not at all surprised. Yeah, the Olmecs on there. on
So
their
a list like that, I wouldn't take that list seriously if they have like in their own brands represented on it.
Well, not their own brands, but
stuff
they're-
they sponsor.
Well, yeah, that's
you
the
know.
stuff they smoke, though. So I think it's understandable. If you look at Cigar Aficionado, why did they rate like a 724, 94, and then never have it on a list?
Well, so the thing about like Cigar Aficionado is like,
It's money. That's all it is.
it's not even just money, but it works. Like, I guess my kind of opinion of it is it's kind of like your lay person magazine, like when you look at reviews of them, whether it's in the magazine or on the, the only time you see any depth review of it is if it gets in the top 10. They post like a 45-second video, and they're smoking it, and they say, the history of it and what it is. But other than that, when you look at the reviews, it's very general notes, and there's nothing about construct. They don't really get into it, but it's just a name and a number, and people are like, oh, I should buy that, right? Like even at Twins, like
people come in with a Cigar Aficionado
Yeah,
25 list all the time.
and it's like, so I think when it comes to like their target is that it's kind of like the lay person, I guess, is a way to kind of explain, which isn't a bad thing if you want to try. It could have gone on there. I mean, I smoked the Rocky 60 this morning because I should revisit this, So it's not a bad thing, but they're not really like trying to really do much with it. Where like Cigar Journal, just from the nature of how you told me they review, it's not banded. Like that's. To me, like, if I was going to go off of anything, it's that, right? And, the Smoking Pipes, if you have collaborations of different cigars and they happen to be on your list,
I'm sure. I'm you can tell me that Cigar Aficionado doesn't have a collaboration with Habano.
Well, I'm sure
Come
I'm
on
sure
now.
everyone that's on there, gets, I'm sure they pay their dues for it, for sure, but it's like, it's just like your layman's magazine, right? Like it's there's a number and a cigar, buy the cigar.
Lame man's.
Like I'm sure, like if anything, they might be like, oh, we need to put like this cigar on the list this year, but then they choose the best one whatever, But Cigar Aficionado doesn't have any collaborations. At least they're smoking everything. Whether some people pay more than others, most people don't think that deep into it, right? Like, but
I mean, let me kind of color what I've said with Cigar Aficionado with a little bit of a nicer. None of the cigars on their list they're all really good cigars. Like you were saying, Dave, at the beginning, these are more like the best cigars of all time, kind of a thing. These were the cigars that for them that year got the best ratings, supposedly. Like you're saying, like a couple of years ago, the 724 original series Lancero got a 93. Was the highest rated Honduran cigar of the year. Didn't make the top 25 list. I wonder why it wasn't there either. And to that point, on Cigar Journal list, there were 2 Lanceros. I don't know if you saw that as I was scrolling down.
2 Lanceros.
I thought that was interesting where there were no Lanceros on the Cigar Aficionado list. I think, Pat, you bring up a good point that Cigar Aficionado is kind of like the everyman, you know, the kind of entry-level consumer, you know, magazine to try and find out what's good. And if they're trying to introduce you to a bunch of established brands and names, you can't really go wrong with anything on their list, except for the fact that 20% of it is Cuban and you can't get it in the United States. But other than that, I mean, most of what was on their list, with the possible exception of 1 or 2, I can't tell you what they are, but their initials are Alec Bradley. I wouldn't think that should be in a top 25. Not that it's not a good cigar. I just wouldn't put it in the top 25. But I think it's a decent list of cigars on the whole.
It kind of seems like the same way that, like, you know, if you were to say like the best bourbons of this year, and you put like Pappy Van Winkle, Blanton's, Willet, all these great, you know, standard bourbons that people look for, whether they're very informed about bourbon or not. But it's like, are they accessible? They're good, but not everyone's able to, you know.
Well, that's the
access
thing
them.
too, is like, who's reviewing these cigars? You know, like, you know, here when we do, I mean, we don't give numbered ratings. We kind of give a thumbs up, thumbs down thing. We don't insult the cigar, but if you don't like it, we're gonna, you know, you're gonna be able to tell. Like, you know, Dave likes eating
Tacos.
You know, Nutella and crackers, right? He loves that stuff, so he might like a Maduro cigar. You know, I like what I like. Dan likes what he likes. You know,
Banana
so,
bread.
so like, you know, like I might say something.
Nothing wrong with banana.
I might say something that I like and how I
even go
like
there.
it, and then Dave might say Pat's wrong. This is what I think, and then some people might, who have Dave's palate, be like, all right, I'm gonna listen to Dave, you know, and then if they have Dan's palate, they might be like, all right, because like go to the pipe section, you're not gonna listen to me about pipes, you're gonna listen to Dan, right? But you can see the reviewers and you know our taste, right? But when you do Cigar Aficionado, at least on Half Wheel, they say who's reviewing it, whether it's Charlie, Patrick,
Right.
Someone, you
Right,
know who
yeah.
it is, and if you follow their reviews, you kind of get what their palate is.
Right.
But on Aficionado, you don't know who's actually reviewing it. You don't know how many people
Well, it's
review
because
them.
they're aficionados.
There's not one guy or 2 guys like Half Wheel, 3 I guess, but that are reviewing like 30 something cigars a month, right? Like they're not doing it. So who's reviewing it? Like, where's the number coming from? Like, that's my issue with Cigar Aficionado. That's why I say it's like your layman, because you just give a number to it because, oh, number, and then they buy it, you know? And it's, you don't know who the reviewer even is. And they might like just, they might love mild cigars, and they're not a full-bodied cigar smoker. They might reflect what the rate, I don't know, like, but, and then you don't often see low-rated cigars on that magazine either. I don't think I've seen anything in the low 80s to under an 80 in my life on Cigar Aficionado.
Under an 80, I don't think I've seen very often. But if you're not at least an 80, 85, which by a 100-point rating would give you a solid B, you suck. You know, so, you know, in reality, their rating system is 15 points, right? 85 to 100 is 15 points. And if I can count on one hand the number of cigars that have gotten above a 96. So maybe you're talking about an 11-point rating.
Yeah, because like I just, when it comes to like looking at bias, you want to see like at least on Half Wheel, like, you know, we were kind of crapping on Charlie for the signature last year. At least the guy gave a bad rating, right? Even though we don't agree with it, like he's able to give bad ratings. So at least if you like his palate and you look at what he says, if he says it's bad and you think you have his palate, it's probably bad for you. You know what I mean? But like, at least he's willing to do that. Where on these other publishments, you don't see bad rating cigars. You know, like I've smoked cigars that some people think. I mean, I'll even name drop it. The Andalusian Bull. LFD guys love it. this guy over here loves it. I smoke it, and I don't know what the hype's about. I really don't. It's not a bad cigar. I don't throw it out, but
It's just
not
not for you.
It's not for me at all.
But
you know?
that's one of the reasons when we started doing the podcast, I didn't want to do like a numbered rating thing, because I think that gives a false impression. Like if a
Taste is
really if a
subjective,
really good
and
cigar
the review should be
gets
subjective.
like an 89, and then you have another cigar on the page that got a 90, what are you going to do? You're going to go look for the 90. You're never going to look for the 89. But they both may be very great cigars for you. The 89 you may even like better, but because it got an 89, you're never going to pick it up. And God help you if it got an 86, But I've seen that happen too. I've seen cigars on these lists that I would say, wow, I would never give a cigar a rating that low. How is that possible? And on the other hand, I've looked at cigars, some of which are on this list. I can't even believe that you would give that a 90 or a 92 or a 93, but it's subjective. And so I think it's more helpful to the consumer to talk about palate than it is to try and rate the cigar. Because I think to your point, Pat, really what you need to do is find somebody on a podcast or on a review board that has a palate similar to yours, and then look for that. I mean, would that be the same with bourbon and stuff like that too?
I would say so. I mean, I think it's again like going back to like what's subjective. You can be capable of looking at a list and saying, okay, I acknowledge that if we're looking at the population, the majority of like bourbon drinkers, they're looking for A, B, and C, and these are hands down like the finest, most rare, most coveted bourbons. But then you can also acknowledge that that might not be your quote unquote underrated bourbon. Like, I feel like if someone's like, oh, this is like the most underrated cigar, underrated bourbon, it means that it might not have made a top list, but for their palate personally, it's one of their favorites.
I have like an example of like the bourbon and spirits. Like, who was it that the Jack Daniel's 10-year or 10 and what was it? Like, it was some.
Not the Coy Hill, right?
No, it wasn't the Coy. It was like Jack Daniel's 10 something. And I remember
I
like
think it was just 10-year, yeah.
people were crapping on it, and then it got like I think #1 or highly rated in this magazine. I don't know anything about spirits when it comes to that stuff, but then people would be coming in here when I was bartending and asking me for that bottle, and we didn't have any more of it, and everyone's like, you can't. It's a bunch of money to buy the thing now because this magazine gave it, but no one really cared about it before it, and I think like if you have H. Upmann #2 is like you probably sell them for a lot of money right now, like it just seems like these cigars might be insignificant before it gets these ratings, and since it's in this case with aficionados limited, I'm not gonna say limited production, but limited accessibility, like it just drives it up, which in a lot of spirits, like a lot, some core line stuff makes it, you can just kind of get everywhere, but then like, something that's limited production comes out and then all of a sudden it just spikes the price up and everyone wants it even though they've had it before and it wasn't great, but now that it has this rating you want whatever. So I don't know, it's just like those arbitrary numbered ratings, I guess. Like I want some explanation as to why it got the rating it did. To see if it's really worth my time smoking. Like, like you watch the H. Upmann video that they put, it doesn't really tell you much about it. I mean, they tell you the history of the cigar and everything. He says, like, fine cigar. He's sitting, lounging back by an ashtray, like, smoking it. But, like, why? Like, why should I put the effort to get the cigar? Like, what? Why? And they don't, even, like the Rocky, I agree with, 100%. Right. But even on the video, like, why should I get that cigar? Other than just this numbered rating, and they don't do that. So, and that's why I don't necessarily agree with Half Wheel's palettes all the time.
No,
but at least you can follow through their review and see where something might have happened to where they give it a bad rating.
Right.
And you can at least agree or disagree with it. And then if you disagree with it, okay, the rating doesn't matter. But if you agree with it, okay, maybe you take the rating seriously. Like, I like being able to follow someone's review to make my own decision based on their experience.
You want to see the logic behind the rating.
What we do here, like, we don't give it a rating, but you know, if we say good, whatever, we do like the beginning impressions. We talk about it in the middle sometimes, and we do any impressions. You know, is it good? Is it bad? If it's bad, we'll say it. We're not gonna completely crap on a cigar because again, like, subjective. But you know, we kind of will tell you, and you can watch us smoking it. You can, for the most part, see the burn. Like if we're taking lighters out and touching it up and everything, like you can at least.
Yeah, we can't lie to you that way. I mean, now that said, that's a great segue here. The construction on these has really been on point, right?
Really good.
Your ash is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen people touching things up,
No need.
relighting.
Nope.
How are you guys liking the cigar? We're back almost in the. I'm in the final third.
Mm-hmm.
Dave looks like he's just starting. Pat's edging up on the final third, and Bree's sucking down that thing like it's you know the best thing since sliced bread. I haven't seen you smoke that far down on a cigar on a
Like
show.
ever.
That's really awesome. And so
Yeah,
you really,
that's fun.
what are your thoughts? How do you
It
now that
kind of
you've had it with
surprised
this
me a little.
pairing?
I mean,
what do you think?
I've had normally Kristoff is not really in my palate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always had like a mediocre experience. And I guess I was expecting like maybe this to kind of fade into something very like earth and pepper forward,
Mm-hmm.
and it's mellowed out very nicely. I'm getting like more cedar. That chocolate note is just getting stronger and stronger. Like the aroma itself is also something I look at. Like it's just nice when the room note of the cigar isn't harsh, and I think that this has that very like smooth, sweet room note. So I it's very enjoyable. I guess I don't want to say I didn't expect it to be so enjoyable, but I'm impressed.
They did twins good with this one.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah, usually, you know, Kristoff's give you a mouthful of dirt. So if you don't like an earthy cigar, usually that's not where you're going. But the format of the San Andreas is just amazing.
How do you think you did with your pairing?
So I would say like as it's going on, I think that the sweetness from the cigar is bringing out a lot of the sweetness in the drink.
Yes.
I think the only thing I would change would be I might do like a little bit less of the brown sugar simple. Maybe like I probably still keep the 2 ounces of bourbon. Maybe a touch more cold brew, and it is interesting how the ice is kind of changing it.
Yeah.
Typically you drink nitro cold brew straight up, and you know you could even argue that it might be a little too potent if you just had it straight up, but it'd be interesting to kind of experiment with the coffee to bourbon ratio, ice versus no ice. So overall, I do think that the additives, you know, the bitters, the Amaro, the Ancho Rays, which is that like tiny bit of spice, with the high proof bourbon was a good call, especially with the cold brew. I think it would just more so be playing with kind of the ratios and the coffee and the ice, and yeah. So I'm curious to see what you guys think.
Well, Pat really liked it.
Yeah. The first time ever he's finished a drink.
That's not true.
Feel free to
maybe the
one more
second.
time.
I've been finishing drinks all
What-
the time.
No.
It's winter.
Not on
He
the show.
finishes drinks in winter.
So what's your thoughts, Pat, on that cigar and the pairing?
So the pairing was really good, and then the cigar, like I've noticed, I had the Kristoff 858 Woodlawn, like a year ago, and it's like the Perfecto. I know they did a TAA this year or PCA that had the Toro box press. But the thing that I appreciate about Kristoff is, like, they make Perfectos and they don't try to get sexy with it. You know, it's like a nice kind of boxy Perfecto, and like it's not like the sexiest Perfecto, but it gets the job done, and like they ensure very good construction with it. Like like every Kristoff Perfecto I've smoked has been an open draw. You know, and
Yep.
you look at companies you compete with, like La Dominicana, like Fuente, who are known for their Perfectos and their rollers. And, you know, like the Hemingway has like that really, pretentious kind of nipple foot, and then it's tapered off. And like that that kind of, and it's very bell shaped, and Kristoff keeps it with it. It's not that bell shaped. It's more of a regular cigar.
It's like
with
an
tapered
Elmer Fudd
ends.
shaped cigar.
Yeah. And again, like, some people might crap on it and say it's not really a Perfecto. It's not like a sexy Perfecto, but it gets the job done. It has a narrow foot. The gauge extends when you're smoking it, and it's a really good cigar. Like I haven't had usually I think every Perfecto I've smoked has been my favorite expression of the blend. And again, like with the box press San Andreas that we got in the shop for the TAA that did so well here, I honestly, when this came in and I saw that it wasn't a closed foot and that it wasn't that cigar, I'm like, I don't think it's going to be better, and then you smoke it and you're like, oh, it is better. And it's impressive how they have, like, the perfect, I like the size, I guess, is to kind of make it brief. Like, it's a very good size, and Kristoff's doing great stuff. Again, like we talked on the last 2 shows ago, like they're getting too big to be small, too small to be big. And, if they just got, more production, I think they can become, like, compete with legacy brands. I know they did the Cameroon Perfecto, like kind of the short story, kind of a stab at Fuente. Not the best Perfecto, I'm not going to lie to you, but it was a really good Cameroon cigar. It wasn't quite a Hemingway to me, but it was good. So, every time Kristoff, and then I had the guardrail. That is a really good
That was
cigar.
really good.
That is really good. And I forget what region tobacco they have in the filler that they were talking about. But Kristoff just continues to put out really good stuff. Their TAAs every year have been completely knocked out of the park. I would say that each TAA that they've done in the past 3 years of me smoking have been my favorite TAAs. So every time they put something new out, it's always a good cigar.
Dave?
Well, Pat really just took the words out of my mouth. I really loved it. I think this is, my favorite cigar that they make is the Vengeance Perfecto. And this is, they're like dead even right now, but I think I'm going to end up liking this more than the Vengeance Perfecto. This is just the San Andreas in a Perfecto format. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they really did a good job.
And I enjoyed the pairing very much. To me, this is one of my favorite pairings that we've had recently. I think the sweetness and the spice of the drink brought out the sweetness and the spice of the cigar. They both played with each other immensely well. It was really, really good. Good job, Reed.
Good job, Bree.
I tried.
Yes. You tried and you succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So that's basically our show for tonight. Next week, we really are going to talk about what our favorites are for
reals.
the cigars of the year. In each of those categories we talked about, best line extension, best limited edition cigar, the best value cigar of the year, and best new blend. And all of our choices are going to be based off of cigars that came out in 2022 and cigars that we got here at Twins. You obviously can't talk about what you don't know. And we'll also be revealing what were those 4 cigars in the consumer choice pack that we have. And we'll talk about which one actually won by vote of the consumers as the favorite in the humidor right now. And that'll be next week, the 10th at 8 o'clock, right here on YouTube, Facebook. We hope you're with us. You won't want to miss it.